Hey everyone, welcome to the NoochieCast. My name is Matt B. Nucci, and I'd like to take this time to just thank you for clicking this video, listening to this podcast, whatever method you're listening to this, because this is the inaugural episode of the NoochieCast, episode 1. It's the start of the year, so there's really not that much going on in gaming, but I really wanted to just get started, starting with episode 1 of the NoochieCast, new decade, new me. You know what I'm saying? So I want to just get this show on the road. If you've been following my channel, which to be honest, you probably haven't, for the past 6 months to a year, you've probably seen me sporadically put up content for whatever thing, some reviews, some lists, some whatever. But here's the NoochieCast, and what I'm planning is that this is a weekly podcast. This is a podcast where I can just talk, I can just ramble, I can do whatever. I'm alone. I'm just doing this by myself, unless I have a guest or unless I'm talking with people. But this is just me, and I'm the only staple here. So I just want you to be able to hear what I have to say about things. We're gonna talk news, we're gonna talk reviews, we're gonna talk basically whatever it is that I deem we should be talking about that day. So if a new game comes out and I've been playing it and I want to talk about how I feel, great. Or if some big news breaks, which it's 2020, I assume there are gonna be a bunch of new consoles released, we'll talk about those too. So it's basically just what we talk about just basically hinges on what happened that week. There'll be definitely some slower weeks where I'm just kind of rambling about some gaming thing that I just want to talk about, or there'll be some really heavy weeks, maybe some that I have to even split into two. But, I really just want to get started, and we can just talk about whatever's going on. So today, there's really not that much news, as I said. It's early January. Nothing's happening. Everyone's still probably on fucking Christmas break or whatever. So there's a couple news items that we're going to talk about, but other than that, I just want to talk about what I've been playing and then go into talking about my game of the year 2019. So, we're going to start 2020 by looking right backwards and talking about some of my favorite games of 2019 and why they were. But initially, let's just start it off with some news. And we're going to do that with a couple of really minute and really dumb things that were announced for both the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. So one of the things that is going on is CES this week. And Sony had its press conference at CES where they had a whole bunch of different things that they announced, whatever Sony nerd stuff that I really don't understand at all. But one of the things is that they had Jim Ryan come out for maybe all of 12 seconds. And he said, hey, here's a bunch of things that we're working on. And all of it we've announced before, except here's the PlayStation 5 logo. And if you've seen the PS4 logo or even the PS3 logo, maybe even the PS2 logo, you'd probably recognize it because it's exactly the same. Just instead of a 4, it's a 5. So, I really honestly don't understand why they did that. I guess it's just because they're getting headlines, and I guess I'm talking about it right now, so they're still getting some attention. But that's one of those things where I felt like they might want to detail some of the specs at CES that it felt like that might be a place where they wanted to discuss what actually is in the hardware, what they're actually bringing to stores this holiday, because before you know it, it'll be E3 and they'll be talking about games and they really have to sell gamers on the games. So I guess we assume that they hold their own conference or their own event like they did in 2013 to talk about whatever their actual console will be, where they announce the physical hardware, what it looks like, and here's all the specs, and then maybe talk about some of the games. But otherwise, it felt like CES might have been a good place to do that. I'm not smarter than Sony, so I'm just going to leave that to them. But It did feel a little weird that Jim Ryan was on stage for maybe 5-10 minutes just to talk about here's a PS5 logo. Although a couple of the other things that he did talk about were some of the current hardware sales and numbers and things like that. So they said that the PS4 right now has sold over 106 million consoles, and PlayStation VR has sold over 5 million consoles, and that there are just about 38.8 million PS Plus users in the US, among other couple other numbers that they shared. And I think this isn't surprising for what the trajectory of the PS4 has been, to have 106 million consoles sold, but still, that is an astounding number. I think they said it's the second highest hardware units sold through of any console ever, behind the PS2 only, and we'll see where it gets. I don't think it'll catch the PS2 because I think the PS2 is at 150 or something like that, but to have a current gen console, when in 2012, 2013, people were saying that console gaming is dead, to have the new consoles sit at over 100 million sold, to have it even approaching that is astounding. 5 million VR headsets sold. I feel like that's a pretty decent number. It's not blowing the roof off of anything, but it's also not really sitting back. And I think it's at a good place where it kind of came out, mid-generation, where at least for me, I was a little hesitant to get it because one, money, but two is games. And I know that with the PS5 coming, the VR will certainly be compatible, and Sony will have an incentive to support it. And I know that the PS5 will not only be more powerful, but will also have that back catalog of games that people who just get it then will be more enticed to buy the VR headset because of those games. So, yeah, I think, like I said, PS5 logo, pretty standard. Really not much to talk about there. I think it's just the other numbers are just a testament to how well the PS4 has been doing. And even think about, like, the Xbox One has sold, I think estimates are around 45-50 million units, maybe a little more, a little less, but those numbers are not awful. You would think that when you compare it to the PS4 that those numbers are just absolutely shitty, but those numbers aren't. If you had told probably Microsoft that might be a little below what they wanted to, the Xbox 360 was somewhere in the high 60s, 70-ish range, so they would have definitely been a little disappointed with that, but they wouldn't have said that this was an absolute failure. But when you look at it compared to the PS4, it blows it out of the water. So it's honestly just a testament to how well the PS4 has been doing. I'm legitimately really excited for the upcoming months where people are announcing the new consoles, because we're back in that cycle that we were in 2013 where all bets are off. The Xbox Series X and the PS5, just like the PS4 and Xbox One, I feel like a lot of people were expecting the Xbox One, even though we didn't know the name at the time, to kind of jump off the Xbox 360 and jump off with that success, and the PS4 to be a little behind the Xbox One because of the PS3's kind of lagging behind, at least in the West. And obviously we know now that that's just not true. So I think it'll be really interesting to see where it goes from here, because Xbox obviously doesn't have the same kind of first party lineup of studios that PlayStation has, although they've done a lot to combat that in the past couple of years with getting a bunch of new studios. I think getting Ninja Theory and Obsidian alone are huge gets, but then you have things like The Initiative coming in with something that we don't know, and then Playground coming in with their open world game that we think is Fable, but who knows? So we'll see. But it seems like there are so many different ways that this can go, and I guess the easy bet would say that PlayStation 5 is probably gonna take the cake, at least right off the bat, because of the goodwill that the PS4 has and the ecosystem and all those other things that, you know, your friends have a PS4, things like that. But we never know going in. The PS5 could just have a colossal fuck up that the Xbox Series X had, or the Xbox One, I mean, had right at the start. And obviously, I don't think they're going to say something like that, because I think PlayStation has learned from Xbox's mistakes, but I think Xbox has learned from their own mistakes too. And I think the Series X is already looking better. I think Phil Spencer at the helm has really righted the ship, and I've really enjoyed what he's done. Game Pass is, I've been saying it for a while, it's the best deal in gaming. I don't think I'm alone in that. That's really not a hot take, but it's such a reason to buy an Xbox. You know, like I said, they kind of lack the first party teams, but they make up for it in services, and especially Game Pass. That is a reason to buy an Xbox. That's one of the main reasons that I primarily play third party games on Xbox, is only because I can get a lot of them with a Game Pass subscription. You know, I played games like Metro Exodus, not Sekiro. What's the other one? Oh, Rage 2, The Outer Worlds, things like that are on Game Pass for free, or whatever, 10 fucking bucks a month, whatever. But I don't have to go and pay $60 each for them, and I'm legitimately in favor of whatever Xbox is doing just because of that, because I know that that's such a great deal. I hope PlayStation comes out with something similar to that. I know they kind of reintroduced PlayStation Now. I hope they kind of build off of that and create a kind of Game Pass-esque thing and move into something like that. Next item on the news is similar, kind of jumping off of that, is the Xbox Series X slogan has been leaked, or I think the Xbox trademarked a slogan for it. It's "Power Your Dreams." Really, again, not surprising. People have been saying those words in that order for months now, so I don't think that that's really surprising. But at least here we can see it officially, almost officially, really not at all officially, but we're going to see it officially. That's what it's going to be. So, yeah, not surprising. Don't really have much else to say on that. And then the third item on the news is that a game called Kentucky Route Zero is coming to consoles. So, Kentucky Route Zero is a game that I've heard about for a while. It's been episodic for years now, and the 5th installment is finally coming out. It's the final installment. It's been only on PC up to this point, but it's coming to consoles now on January 28th in the Kentucky Route Zero TV edition is what they're calling it. And just personally, this is something I'm really excited for. I haven't been particularly in tune with Kentucky Route Zero, but it's always a game that I've kind of heard about tangentially just from people I follow on Twitter and whatnot, and I'm actually really excited to play it. So, because I don't really have a gaming PC, and I primarily play on consoles, so I really never had a chance to play this. Other people who are nerds have played this on PC, so I'm just excited to finally get a chance to play it, see what all the hubbub is about. So, yeah, that's the news. Like I said, not much really going on there. It's January. I'm sure we'll start getting stuff coming out every once in a while. But, again, early January, not much happening right now. So we'll move on. Next, I kind of just want to talk about a little bit what I've been playing. This is kind of something we'll do every week. And by we, I mean me, because, again, I'm alone. And so I'm just going to talk about a little bit what I've been playing, what I like, what I didn't like. You know, you kind of get the gist. So if you've seen the episode 0 and 0B that I did for the NoochieCast, which is where I kind of just did this, but on a game. So it was basically a review discussion, but they were both for Death Stranding and The Evil Within, and both of which I played pretty recently. Evil Within, as you'll know, just kind of a rundown, did not like it at all. You can go watch the video if you're inclined to see why I didn't like it, but I just thought it was really not good in pretty much every way. Enemies were kind of cool, but other than that, combat was not fun. Whatever, you can watch the video. It was really just not a great experience for me. Death Stranding, on the other hand, much more positive experience, was, not to spoil what's coming up later, but was one of my favorite games of the year. I just think it was such an incredibly soothing and, kind of mesmerizing experience, just with everything going on. The story was really interesting, and the characters were really interesting. I really liked people like Higgs and Deadman, among others, that really kind of brought me into the story. But then the gameplay was just surprisingly good. I don't know how else to say it. The gameplay on paper should not work at all. It's like you're just walking across the country for reconnecting these things. It sounds like a walking simulator, and for all intents and purposes, it kind of is, but it's a walking simulator with a bunch of different things like hung off the edge of it, and looking good. And then it plays really well, and it's just really atmospheric, and it's really engaging, and I just really liked it. So yeah, Death Stranding, again, there's another video up that I go into a lot more detail about it, but that's that. A couple other games I've been playing. Catherine Full Body Edition, PS4 exclusive. If you never played Catherine, the original on PS3, which came out in 2011, I think, it was one of my favorite games of the year back then, and it remains that. It's honestly, it's just an incredible kind of two-part game where you have the romantic part on one side and then the puzzle part, Q*bert. It's like opposite Q*bert. I really don't know how to explain it, but just, the puzzle blocks. And both of them are awesome. Both of them are, they hit that point where it's like, I'm on the one side and I'm on the romantic side, and that ends and I'm like, no, I want this to keep going on. And then I hit the puzzle gameplay and I'm like, oh, fuck, right. Like this rocks. And then I do that and I finish it and I'm like, no, I want this to keep going on. And then it's just a cycle because I'm back on the romantic side and then I'm back in the puzzle side, and it just never ends until it does, and you just get really sad. But whatever. So yeah, Catherine Full Body, highly recommend it. The new part they added in, a little weird, but not weird in like an uncomfortable way, but like a just kind of the way that it feels a little shoehorned. You'll understand if you've played it, but the fact that the new potential interest in the game is also Catherine, but with a Q. I don't know if that's a spoiler. Whatever. But it's just, it feels a little like kind of forced in, but also the story itself is pretty interesting and definitely calls for another replay. So whatever. I think it's worth it. I absolutely love that game. So you should definitely play it if you haven't played it for whatever reason. Next is After Party. So Night School Studio, you're probably familiar with it, but developers of Oxenfree, which was also one of my favorite games of the generation. After Party it feels like everything I could want in a game. So it's like Oxenfree, where it's that kind of like story-driven, choice-based, dialogue trees, and instead of being on a mountain with some kids, you're in hell partying with Satan. So there's really nothing to go wrong there. It's a 5 or 6 hour game. For the first couple hours, I was actually really disappointed by it because I felt like I felt like it wasn't really doing much. It felt like it was just more Oxenfree, but with less to say. And not really doing anything with the formula. But then as it went along, I actually started to really enjoy it. I really liked the performances, and the story gets a lot more in depth and a lot more thematic while still keeping the facade of being pretty funny and kind of cheeky and dumb and they're cracking jokes all the time. But it's also, you see this friendship and you see how people in hell interact with each other, which I have never seen before. So After Party, also recommend it. If you played Oxenfree and you liked it, you're definitely going to like this. Or if you just like to drink your ass off, you're probably going to like this too. So last one that I've been playing is Jedi Fallen Order. I'm close to finishing it. I am not sure what I'm going to do with that yet. I think I might do a review discussion on it and make it like a 1.5, but I also might just make that next week's topic or a topic in a couple weeks because I need to we need something to talk about for one of the shows, and I think I might just make it that. So we'll see. We're coming out. Kind of long and short of it is that I really like it. Actually, similar to After Party, I didn't really love it at first. I thought it was a little slow, but then as it goes on, I really kind of fell in love with the characters, and the combat got a lot more intense. And the Souls part of it was just beating the shit out of me for a while. But then it does it really well in the last few boss fights where you really get that, like, I want to quit and I fucking hate this. And then you'll click. Something will click and something will just make you understand what you need to do, and you'll just beat a boss immediately. And it's the greatest feeling ever. So I think we'll talk about that later. Don't fret. My opinions on that will be out at some point soon when I am actually able to finish it. But yeah, that's kind of what I've been playing. I guess there was a little bit of Modern Warfare thrown in there. And the Outer Worlds I was playing a little bit of a couple weeks ago. And that's another game that I really enjoyed. I was able to finish that. And it's legitimately one of my favorite games that follows that format. I never really loved Fallout 4. I'm not entirely sure why. It just never really clicked with me. Maybe it was just a bunch of games coming out at the same time, and I didn't have the time to put into Fallout 4. But the Outer Worlds really did click with me, and I really enjoyed it. So that's kind of that. That's what I've been playing. So next, kind of the last part of this, probably the longest part that I want to get into is my games of the year for 2019. So I'm going to have 5. I have a list of 5, and then I have a couple honorable mentions that I just kind of want to talk about briefly. So we'll get into that. So with couple of honorable mentions. So a couple of these are games that I haven't finished yet, but I would really like to, and I'm very much enjoying and maybe would make the list, but I don't know. I'm really happy with my list, but some of these are games that I just kind of want to give a shout out to, but haven't really had the chance to really delve into them as much as I would like to be able to put them on a list or really discuss them at length. And the 3 that are there are Metro Exodus. So I'm a huge fan of the other 2 Metro games, and I was really excited for this. This is another case of I really didn't have the opportunity to buy it because there were a bunch of other games coming out, and I just didn't have the money or the time to buy it. And just turns out at E3 was announced that it's coming to Game Pass. So I downloaded it on Game Pass. I'm a couple hours in right now, really enjoying it. I really like that story. I really like that world. And that's just a game I'm excited to get back to, but also really enjoying so far. The second one on this list is Sekiro. So the game that won Game of the Year at the Game Awards for, I'd say probably to a lot of people's surprise. I know I really didn't expect it to win there. It's a game that is in that kind of folder, I'd say, of games, that kind of niche of games. It's in that, obviously, that From Software tunnel, but also it's in that kind of tunnel of games that everyone knows is really good, but no one really ever admits how good they are compared to other games, if that makes sense. It's like they're in their own kind of segmented off area, and they're always nominated for Game of the Year or given like an honorable mention, haha, for their games of the year, but they're never really assigned Game of the Year because it's hard to give that kind of title when it's a game that not everyone will like, because how difficult it is and how unfriendly it is to beginners. I guess I wouldn't call myself a beginner. I played both the original Dark Souls and Bloodborne pretty significantly, but never to the point where I beat them or that I ever really got good at them. So, but I'm really enjoying Sekiro. I do plan on, hopefully, I probably won't beat it because I'm just terrible at those games, but I'm just hoping to get past it or to get through it to a point where I can say that I, saw enough of it that my opinion wouldn't change. And I am currently at the point where I'm really enjoying it. I think it's just like the other games in the series or in that genre, where I think it's really well made. It's really satisfying when you beat a boss, but it also kicks your ass. So, yeah, that's that. And then the third one in this area is Fire Emblem Three Houses. This is another game that is just massive. I'm probably 7 or 8 hours in. For a game like this, it's probably 50 hours to beat. Obviously, I haven't put in enough time to call it my game of the year, but whoo boy, if the 8 hours I put in really can speak for the rest of the game, I fucking love this game, man. It's so satisfying. So I've never played a Fire Emblem game before, but I got this one for the Switch, and it's so good at balancing the strategy RPG elements with the talking and the open world elements. You do a lot of the teaching. There's a teaching element. I legitimately couldn't tell you if those are in other Fire Emblem games, but those are surprisingly satisfying. I don't know. I just don't know how else to explain it. You get a grade at the end of them, and it's like good, perfect, great. And when you get that perfect, you're like, yeah. But when you get a bad, I'm like, oh fuck, what did I do? And then just running around the monastery is really cool. But then also, I'm really already invested in these characters, and I've had a bunch of times where I just quit out of the game because someone died, and I don't want anyone to permadie. That's what we're going with. So, yeah, I'm really loving that game. Really itching to get back to it, and obviously can't give it a spot on the Game of the Year list because I haven't put enough time into it, but I'm really enjoying it so far. So a couple other honorable mentions that I just wanted to give a shout out to. After Party, obviously, been playing that recently. I don't think it really is groundbreaking necessarily, but I think it really does what it wants to do well, especially in the latter half. And I just found it to be kind of everything I wanted from it. Really interesting, really good story, good performances. Second, Catherine Full Body. I would have put this on the list, but I don't love putting remasters. Well, whatever. You'll see why that's kind of hypocritical in a second. But I saw this as kind of a remaster with like a couple extra things sprinkled in, and I didn't feel like that was worth putting on the list. But I really wanted to give it a shout out for a second time in like 20 minutes because I just love this game. I think it's something everyone should play because it's just such a good game, such a great story, and such great gameplay that is just incredible. And then lastly is Jedi Fallen Order. So far, obviously haven't finished it yet, but want to give a shout out to it. Really like the gameplay so far. And I just think that it's, other than some, and by some I mean a fuck ton of bugs and pop in, and really, I don't think it looks that great, but I don't really care about graphics. I'm still playing on my base PS4. So I think it's really satisfying in gameplay. Love the characters, love the story. And yeah, I just think it's a really solid game that I'm enjoying. So let's get into the list proper, the actual top 5 games of my 2019. At number 5 is probably a surprise to most people because it's not a game that I've really heard anyone talking about, and that's because it's an indie game. So, full disclosure, I write for a website called Gaming Bolt. You may or may not have heard of them. I do some reviews over there, and I was given this game as a review, so I was provided with this game for free. But this game is called Arise: A Simple Story. It's a short, kind of cute platformer where you follow a man who has died, and you're seeing him relive some key moments in his life through platforming sections. No dialogue, no anything, just beautiful music, beautiful graphics, just a bunch of really interesting, really diverse and engaging environments. And I loved it. It's so emotional. It's something that I think you should just go into blind. It's 5 or 6 hours long. You can play it in maybe 1 or 2 sessions. I can speak, and I just really think everyone should play it. It's so emotional. It's you fall in love with the guy, and you love him when things go great, and you're sad when things go bad. And I love this game. I think it's fantastic, and I really think a lot of people should play it. And for that reason, it's my number 5. Next on my list, at number 4, is the reason that you may or may not think that I'm a hypocrite for leaving Catherine off the list, and that's because number 4 is Resident Evil 2 Remake. Now, I do think that there's a difference in Catherine Full Body and Resident Evil 2. I feel like most people will agree with me. Resident Evil 2 is just a full ground up remake where they went in and they said, here's the story and here's the general idea of what we're doing, and we're just going to remake it. Whereas Catherine, they're like, all right, so we like kind of have most of everything done. We're just going to up-res it and add in a few new dialogue things and a couple new cutscenes and new endings and things like that, which is great. But Resident Evil 2 is, for all intents and purposes, a new game, just with a story you've probably seen before. And Resident Evil 2 pulls it off in a way that I think is so incredible in its game design. It's impeccable in the way that it does that, because the way that you play in one building for 90-something% of the game, where you're just in this police station and you're going up and down like 3 or 4 floors and into the garage and all these things, and you're finding keys to unlock something over here, and then you'll find something over here that's still locked, so you have to go over back there, and then you have to run through here in a certain way, and then you have to go here and turn the power on so you can come back here. And it just does it so well, using its resources economically, but also instilling that fear, that kind of horror, kind of survival horror fear that Evil Within does not do. And it's just so successful at doing everything that it wants to do, because it is so enthralling in the way that you're always, at least for me, I was always excited when I would find a new path, or I would figure out that even though I've been there like 7 times, that certain area was the way I needed to go next, because now I have the heart key that would unlock this like side door that I just kind of started ignoring because I had seen it so many times and I could never get in. And those kinds of things made it so interesting. And then you find the story where there are 2 sides of the story, and you can see kind of the same thing, the same narrative, but from 2 different perspectives, and compare them and see how they differ and how things change, but how they stay the same. And somehow you're seeing the same environments and the same general beats, and somehow you get 2 wildly different and both perfectly cohesive narratives. And I found them both to be really solid and really well done. and I just really enjoyed my time with Resident Evil 2. And I think that was a a really great way that they were able to remake an old classic in a way that didn't feel like a cash grab. And by that I mean they actually put a lot of effort into it and made it feel like a new game and put the resources into it that needed to go into it to make it a game that people wanted to play, as opposed to something that people wanted just for nostalgia. So that's that. On to number 3. And number 3 on my Game of the Year list is a game I just talked about, actually, and that is The Outer Worlds. So, like I said, I never particularly got into the Fallout games. I've played through Fallouts 3 and 4, never really got into New Vegas, which I guess is ironic because Obsidian, but I didn't, not that I didn't enjoy the Fallouts, the 3D Fallouts, but it was just, they never particularly engaged me in that they were so expansive that it was a little overwhelming. Honestly, I'll talk about this probably at a later time, but in the same way that I didn't love The Witcher 3, but not because they weren't well made, or that, in the case of The Witcher 3, not because the story wasn't good or the characters weren't good or legitimately that any part of the game wasn't good at all, because it's all incredible. But it was just that there was so much coming at you at once, and I'm the type of person who likes to kind of bounce around from games sometimes and go from one game to another because that's the mood I'm in right now. And when I'm playing those other games, for me at least, I would kind of need to buckle down and say, hey, I'm going to play this for the next 40 hours that I'm gaming will be in Fallout 4 or The Witcher 3 or whatever. And I felt like with those, I wasn't able to do it, but with The Outer Worlds, it's both shorter and more engaging for me. I think it's more because the sci-fi kind of spacey Mass Effect-ish style story was a little more fun and interesting to me personally than the fantasy part of The Witcher or something like that, which are historically for me less interesting. I just don't love fantasy as much. But I just thought The Outer Worlds was so engaging. It was being a little shorter. It was also a little more concise in what it was saying. So it wasn't like, it was, but it was less so where you had to talk to someone and they want you to do this, and then that person to get what you want wants you to do something else, and then that person wants you to do something else, and you go like 7 branches down, and then you kind of just feel like you're going on fetch quests for no reason, or you're going to kill some dudes for no reason. Whereas The Outer Worlds, you're still doing that, but it felt more like you're consistently progressing the story if you want to, or if there are side quests that you're able to do if you want to just go and get lost and kind of fuck around for a while. But I just really liked the idea that I just kept progressing and I kept seeing this world, and I kept enjoying the characters and kind of enjoying where the world was going, and I just ended up really enjoying the game. I thought the combat was, in true Fallout style, a little wonky, in that I never really knew how much damage what my guns were going to do, and I didn't love the kind of retooled VATS system, but that's a pretty minor gripe when you have a world as realized it as this one, or the worlds. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I know it's been kind of divisive this year. Not everyone loves it, but I felt like it was exactly what I wanted. It was exactly what I thought it was going to be. It was exactly what I wanted. It met and exceeded every expectation I had, pretty much. So, yeah, I think The Outer Worlds, number 3. Number 2 on my list is one of the biggest snubs, I think, of any game that I've seen in 2019, or maybe ever, because it was getting, when it came out, I think it's a product of having a really weird release date, coming out in like early summer, or like I think it came out then. Anyway, the game is Devil May Cry 5. So it came out at a weird time in that it came out before fall, so people forgot about it. But it somehow was, when it came out, it got 9s, 9.5s across the board, I think. And I personally played it. I fucking loved it. It was the only Devil May Cry game I had played ever was Ninja Theory's like DMC Devil May Cry Double Name reboot in whatever 2013, I think, and 2012, whatever. And I liked that back then. I didn't think it was like groundbreaking or anything, but I saw this coming out. I saw it announced. Everyone was excited about it, and I really was surprised when it didn't get much love in Game of the Year nominations. Didn't even get a nomination in the Game Awards, which maybe is a testament to how many good games there were this year. I personally, obviously, didn't think there were as many great games as Devil May Cry 5, but I was just really surprised that not many places were nominating it or giving it many awards. I guess it won Best Action Game at the Game Awards, but it didn't get a nom for Game of the Year. And I do absolutely think it's the best action game of the year because it's the best pure action game, where it's the game where you can just go and you can, if you want, you can just mash buttons and you'll probably kill whatever you need to kill. Or if you want, you can go be strategic and find your combos and use all your kind of side weapons and other whatever methods you have to kill people. But it all just boils down to how are you going to kill everything in your path? And it's so over the top in some ways. It's so just pure action greatness that I am so happy was made. It doesn't push much forward, which I guess is a knock against it, but I also don't really think is a knock against it, because I think it just does what it does, and it does it well, and it does it in a way that's so much fun and that really should be recognized. And I just think it's one of the best games of the year. It was actually, before a couple weeks ago, it was my game of the year for 2019, but I had another game come out that I put over 50 hours into in the course of about a week and a half. And that game is Death Stranding. So if you've seen my Death Stranding video, I believe I hinted at it that it was my game of the year. Obviously, it is my game of the year. Putting 50 hours in just over a week is kind of absurd, especially for me, where I'm, like I said, I'm jumping around games all the time, just going from game to game to game to game to game. And for me to sit down and say, this is the game I want to play for the next 40, 50 hours is personally just an absurd thing to happen. But Death Stranding did it. And as I mentioned in the video, the review, I've never played a Metal Gear Solid game. That's one of the biggest holes in my gaming catalog, where I need to go back and play those, and I hope they're all brought to PS5 or whatever at some point. But I need to go back and play those. But I had gone into Death Stranding. I didn't even expect to buy Death Stranding. I didn't even expect to play it because I just knew it's Kojima. I've never played one of his games before. I never really understood what was happening. I know he excites a lot of people, but he never really excited me. And then I saw a bunch of people talking about it and a bunch of people playing it, and really found myself getting intrigued by what was happening, surprisingly, because all I'm seeing is this dude who looks like Norman Reedus walk across a bunch of grass. And I was so engaged that playing it, even 2 or 3 hours in, I was just like, this is what I want. And I think a lot of it has to do with the music. So the whole thing where they play a bunch of songs whenever you're walking long distances, they'll play a song and the name of the song will pop up on the screen, and you'll just hear that song for however long until it ends. But it'll fill most of the time for how long you're walking to your destination. And it was those kinds of moments that really defined my experience with this game, because I just felt like it was one of the most atmospheric games that really has a vibe that it wants to hit and absolutely fucking nails it. And I thought that it was just, it knew what it wanted and it hit it, and it hit it out of the park. And there are obviously problems with the story gets convoluted and it doesn't make sense. And I love a lot of the characters. I don't love every single character. And sometimes I would just get frustrated because I'd just be running into BTs for no reason, and I would just find myself running out of their pools of mud, or I honestly don't even know. It's fucking Kojima. I don't even understand it. But I felt like even with the problems where you're just, even like with weight management, I didn't love holding down R2 and L2 the whole time and going slower. That wasn't really what I was looking for. But the idea of just like walking wherever you needed to go was just so surprisingly interesting. I loved it. I really could not get it out of my head. It's still in my head. Still, I played it like a week ago, I think. I don't know. Somewhere around there. And it's the story and the gameplay is still in my head. It still has its hooks in me, and it's to the point where I want to go back. And even though I have not that much left to do, other than like pick up lost cargo and deliver it to people, or build roads or things like that, just to help out other people, I just really want to go back and play it because it's so interesting in the way that it uses those social strand connections, is kind of new in a way, like a shared world, but not really kind of way. I don't know, like an asynchronous shared world. I just think it's so interesting. It's so fascinating. It's unlike anything I've ever played before, and I just absolutely loved it. So, Death Stranding, my game of the year for 2019. And yeah, that's that. I, other things. That's kind of what I'm looking for this podcast to be. That's probably gonna kind of wrap up episode 1 here. So we're looking at about for a little over 45 minutes right now. I think this is kind of what I'm looking at for timing. Some might be closer to 30 minutes if I have less to say or there's less going on. Some might just, go into the ether for infinity time if I just have infinity things to say, which sometimes I do. You never know. But yeah, that's the NoochieCast. That's episode 1. Thank you for listening. I hope to see you. These will be coming out every Friday. So this posted Friday the 10th, and I'm hoping that barring any problems or any whatever, this will come out every Friday for the foreseeable future. You can follow me on Twitter at Matt Bianucci, BIANUCCI. That'll be in the description. Or you can just keep an eye out here. I'll be posting things, like I said, every Friday with the NoochieCast and intermittently with other videos for whatever I feel like making. So yeah, thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.